My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, a pastry chef from Portland, Oregon. If I had to name my biggest flaw, it's that I've always believed love and hard work would be enough to earn respect, even from people who never wanted to give it. I opened the doors to my dream bakery with trembling hands, invited my family to celebrate, and watched them laugh at me like I was a child playing pretend, until the mayor walked in and asked for me by name. If you've ever felt underestimated by your own family, then you'll understand why this story still makes my chest ache. Please like and subscribe, it helps more than you know. And tell me, has family ever dismissed your dreams? Drop where you're watching from in the comments. The truth is, my bakery wasn't just a business. It was my childhood dream wrapped in flour, sugar, and long nights nobody believed I could endure. But before that ribbon-cutting moment, before the smell of fresh bread filled the air, there was my family, the same people who taught me how to stir batter and who later swore I'd never make it. I should have known, even as I decorated the space with flowers and ribbons, that their smiles would hide something sharp, something waiting to cut me down. I grew up on cinnamon and noise. Our Portland bungalow always smelled like something in the oven. Banana bread on weekday mornings, apple crisp on Sundays, butter cookies at Christmas that melted on your tongue like secrets. Mom, Patty, queen of potlucks, wore an apron that said, "Baking is love you can eat." Dad, Rick, practical to a fault, measured life in paychecks and coupons. And my older brother, Mason, he measured everything in wins. Soccer trophies, debate medals, and the internship that landed him a finance job before graduation. If Mason were a bakery item, he would be the multi-tiered cake with sparklers. I was the steady loaf that disappeared by Monday because everyone secretly needed it. We had traditions. Every Saturday, we'd hit the farmer's market before sunrise. Mom would squeeze peaches with reverence, Dad would haggle over bulk flour, and I'd hover at the pastry stalls, studying lamination like it was scripture. At home, I'd test recipes at the old butcher block island. Hands dusted in flour, hair tied up, heart too big for my chest. Mom loved to narrate. "You've got a gentle fold, Em," she'd say. "That's the trick." Dad would pour coffee and add, "Gentle is fine, but a backup plan is better." When I was 12, I won a county bake-off with a lemon rosewater cake that startled the judges into silence. I remember the weight of the blue ribbon around my neck, the thrill like a sparkler in my ribs. I looked to my parents, hungry for that look, the one they saved for Mason. Mom squeezed my shoulders. "You're special, honey," Dad smiled. "You have a knack. Just remember, hobbies don't pay mortgages." I swallowed the sweet with the ash. It became a pattern. High school made it louder. Mason's acceptance letter to Stanford got framed on the living room wall. My letter to a culinary program got taped to the fridge under a magnet shaped like a cow. "It's not less, it's just different," Mom said. Dad added, "We'll help with some tuition, but you should look at business classes." Something practical. I did both. Community college accounting at night, pastry courses at dawn. I'd set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., bike to a bakery downtown, and pull croissants from the oven until the sun colored the sky pink. I loved every blister, every burn that meant I was getting better. I thought love and work would be enough. Then life did its thing. The year I turned 23, Mom got sick. Nothing dramatic at first. Fatigue, tests, doctors who wrote down more than they said. I picked up extra shifts to help with bills, learned to make soup that soothed her throat, and kept the house humming while Dad tracked copays in a notebook. Mason visited between flights. "Hang in there, kid," he'd say, dropping off Whole Foods bags like absolution. "You're the best caretaker. Caretaker, not baker, not bewilder." Another pattern, Mom recovered slowly. We learned the language of remission, hope spoken with caution. She lost her appetite for rich things and wanted toast with honey, which I delivered in bed on a tray I painted with lemons. "You're my soft place to land," she whispered. It felt like proof of love. It was also a camouflage for everything we didn't say. When she got stronger, I brought up a dream I'd tucked away in a recipe notebook, a tiny bakery with warm light and a handwritten menu. I had a name picked out, North Star Bread, Because baking had always been the thing that guided me home. I drew floor plans on napkins, made spreadsheets of startup costs, scouted neighborhoods where the rent didn't make you laugh. Dad read my plan like a prosecutor. Industrial mixer? That's a car payment, he muttered. Walk-in fridge? Insurance? Permits? What happens if Portland has another ice storm and you lose power? I'll have contingency, I said. Prep kitchen rental, a generator fund, a wholesale sideline, so cash flow isn't just walk-ins. And pop-ups to build a base before I open the doors. He looked at me then, really looked. Sounds like you've thought this through, I lit up. I have, Mom set her tea down. We can help with a small loan, she offered, eyes darting to Dad. But sweetheart, just remember, food businesses are hard. Don't get your heart set on. You know, miracles. I don't need a miracle, I whispered. I need a chance. They offered $5,000 and a warning. Don't be reckless. Mason offered advice and a smirk. Margins are brutal. You should sell brand partnerships instead, he said. Dessert boxes for influencers. That's money. People come to bakeries for soul, not unboxing videos, I said. He shrugged. Soul doesn't scale. What I didn't say, so the ool keeps people alive. I pieced the rest together the slow way. A microloan through a women-owned business fund. A landlord who liked my sourdough and knocked $200 off the rent for 6 months. A retired baker named Lorraine who walked into my pop-up, tasted my cardamom buns and said, "When you're ready to roll laminated dough for the morning crowd, you'll call me?" She became my mentor the way the sun becomes morning, quiet and inevitable. The space was a former plant shop with brick walls and a window that poured light across the front table like a blessing. I painted the trim a deep teal, strung warm bulbs across the ceiling, and scrubbed the floor until it gleamed. I thrifted mismatched plates and wrote prices in chalk. I cried alone the day the sign went up, North Star bread in gold letters, because sometimes joy hurts on the way out. 2 weeks before opening, I mailed handmade invitations wrapped with twine. Grand opening, Saturday, 8 a.m. Come hungry. I tucked a personal note into my family's envelope. Please come see what I built. It would mean the world. Mom called that night. We'll be there, she promised. I'll bring my church ladies. They've been praying for you. Dad added, we're proud you're making something, just don't be discouraged if it's slow. Mason texted a thumbs up and a calendar invite he titled Sister's Hobby Launch. I laughed, but it stung. I baked harder. I tested a vegan chocolate cake that didn't taste like a compromise, tweaked the hydration on my sourdough until the crumbs sang, and taught myself to pipe buttercream roses with a light hand. Lorraine approved with a grunt and a nod. Don't show off. Show up, she said. Consistency is the flex. The night before opening, I barely slept. I laid out my apron, set my alarm for 3:45 a.m., and wrote, "You belong here" on a sticky note I stuck to the espresso machine. At 4:12, I was rolling croissant dough while the city was still dark, counting butter blocks like beads on a rosary. At 6:40, the first trays went in. By 7:10, the air tasted like sugar and heat and everything I'd sacrificed. At 7:40, I flipped the chalkboard to open at 8 and took a picture I would look at later when I needed proof I survived. They started arriving at 7:50. Neighbors with dogs, a couple from my pop-ups, a nurse from the night shift with tired eyes who smiled when I handed her a warm scone at the house. I kept scanning the door for my family, nerves tapping under my skin like a metronome. At 8:05, Mom breezed in, smelling like eucalyptus and perfume, 2 church ladies in tow. "Look at this," she trilled, eyes skimming the menu. "It's sweet, sweet," I repeated. "That's sort of the point." Dad followed, hands in pockets, eyes sweeping the room like he was assessing a house for resale. "You did all this yourself?" he asked. "With a village," I said. But yeah, Mason was last. Watch checking, sunglasses on, phone in one hand. He glanced at the line, at me in my flour-dusted apron, and pressed a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Cute," he said. "Let's see if it lasts past the hashtag." I inhaled through my nose. "Welcome to North Star. First coffee's on me." He leaned in. "I'll post. But you should really consider corporate gifting. That's where the money is. Order what you want, Mason. They clustered near the counter while I pulled shots and plated pastry, adrenaline burning off my fear. Mom sampled a bite of my signature cardamom bun, chewed thoughtfully, then nodded. It's good, she said. A little spicy. Cardamom, I said. It's the point. She smiled like she was humoring a child. Well, your Aunt Jo doesn't like adventure. Good thing Aunt Jo isn't in the market, Lorraine muttered behind me, sliding a tray of croissants onto the rack. I bit my lip to hide a laugh. By 8:30, the line snaked out the door. The nurse brought her friend. The couple ordered seconds. A stroller brigade rolled in like a parade. I moved, muscle memory and joy carrying me. For once, I didn't hear Dad's calculator brain or Mason's metrics. I heard my oven and my heart. Then I heard Mom's voice, too loud, too bright, talking to her church ladies by the window. She's been trying for years, she said. We told her to keep it a hobby, but you know Emily, head in the clouds. At least she's finally doing something while she looks for a real job. Heat rose Yui neck. Lorraine's head snapped toward me. I kept my hands moving, knife steady through a strawberry galette, smile professional. The church ladies exchanged looks. One whispered, "Bless her heart." Across the room, Mason leaned over his phone, posting a story with a caption. Supporting my sis's side hustle, pop by for carbs. He added a dancing croissant gif. My stomach dropped through the floor. Dad wandered to the register and squinted at the prices. $4.50 for a scone? He asked. Back in my day, a dozen donuts cost. Back in your day, butter wasn't $9 a pound, Lorraine said, pushing a tray forward. Pay or don't. Don't heckle the chef. He blinked, taken aback. I hid a grateful smile. A shadow at the door pulled my attention. A familiar navy suit, a recognizable face from city council meetings who'd visited my pop-up once and asked about hiring at-risk youth. He was flanked by a woman with a leather notebook and kind eyes. Emily, he called. Smells like a good morning. The room hushed. Mom's smile froze. Mason lowered his phone. Dad straightened. Councilor Reed, I said. Welcome to North Star, he grinned. Mayor's tied up across town, but she sent me, and a note. Don't sell out before I arrive. Also, he lifted a small envelope. A congratulations from the Small Business Alliance, the church ladies gasped. Someone clapped. My hands shook around a coffee cup I suddenly couldn't remember how to hold. Mom leaned toward me, voice paper thin. You didn't tell us you knew people like that. I kept my eyes on the counselor, my voice even. You didn't ask. As I reached for the envelope, another sound cut through the morning, a soft, disbelieving scoff from behind my mother, followed by a whisper. Well, she won't be smiling when she sees the lease. I looked up. The woman who said it wasn't a stranger, and she was holding a folder with my landlord's name on the tab. The words slid into the room like a knife under the skin. She won't be smiling when she sees the lease. My hand froze halfway to the counselor's envelope. I turned, eyes locking on the voice. It was Aunt Carol, Mom's sister. Practical, sharp-tongued, never seen without a stack of real estate folders under her arm. She wore her realtor smile like armor, lips pressed thin, eyes gleaming with something that wasn't support. My chest tightened. What lease? I asked. Carol's smirk was sugar-sweet. Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. You'll find out soon enough. Just focus on your little pastries. The room buzzed with chatter again, but my ears rang. Lorraine shot me a look, protective, like a wolf guarding her cub. Mason, meanwhile, leaned in toward Carol. What's she talking about? He asked. Carol gave a shrug that was too deliberate. Business is business. I wanted to press, but the line at the counter was growing. Customers shuffled, cups clinked, and the espresso machine hissed. I pasted on my service smile, even as my hands shook, piping buttercream onto a cupcake. Then Mason struck. He sauntered over to the counter, phone angled toward me. Smile, Em, he called. You're trending. Side hustle sis opens bakery. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mason, don't... Too late. He tapped the post. A notification pinged. His followers, Thousands of finance bros, frat buddies, and family friends were already liking, laughing. Lorraine slammed a tray on the counter. This isn't a side hustle. This is a damn bakery. Mason lifted his eyebrows. Relax, Lorraine. Exposure is good for her. My mom chuckled nervously to her church ladies. He's just teasing. He means well, but the ladies weren't buying it. One whispered, "That's cruel," as she stirred her coffee. Dad, oblivious, muttered over his receipt, $4.50 for a scone. And me? I swallowed the lump in my throat, looked at the line of strangers, my customers, and forced my voice to stay calm. Order up! By 10 a.m., the shelves were half empty. Croissants gone, scones nearly wiped out, the last strawberry galette cooling under glass. The air buzzed with warmth and sugar, except at the family table by the window, where tension sat like a storm cloud. Mom's voice cut through again. Emily, come sit with us. Take a break. You're overworking yourself. I wiped flour from my hands. I can't. People are still ordering. She gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sweetheart, this is what I mean. You can't run yourself ragged for something that might not even last a year. You should have listened. You should have stayed in the kitchen at home. Saved yourself the heartbreak. Her words cracked something in me. For years, the kitchen at home had been my sanctuary. Now she said it like a cage, Lorraine hissed under her breath. Don't let her shrink you. But it was Mason who twisted the knife deeper. He leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head, and said loudly enough for the room to hear, Face it, Em. You're good at frosting cupcakes, but you'll never run a real business. Laughter bubbled from his friends on FaceTime, who were watching him live stream my bakery like it was entertainment. My cheeks burned hot enough to sear sugar. I wanted to scream, to throw Mason's phone into the oven, to shout at my mother that I wasn't a child playing house. Instead, I bit my tongue until I tasted blood and forced myself to serve another customer. That's when Councilor Reed cleared his throat. He lifted his cup. Emily, these are the best croissants I've had in years. You'll be hearing from me again. Our office is looking for a pastry vendor. The room hushed. My heart skipped. Mason's smirk faltered. Mom's church ladies clapped politely. But across the room, Aunt Carol's voice cut through like glass. Let's see if she still has this place in 6 months, after the new lease terms hit. My chest went cold. Lease terms? What was she talking about? And why did my family, my own blood, look like they knew something I didn't? The morning had felt like a fragile victory. Every pastry sold was a stitch holding me together, but by noon the seams ripped. The bakery was buzzing. A group of college kids laughed over cinnamon rolls. A dad balanced his toddler on his hip while sipping coffee. For one brief shimmering moment, I let myself believe. Maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd proved them wrong. Then Aunt Carol stood up, papers in her hand. Her heels clicked against the floor like gunshots. She cleared her throat, her voice slicing through the warm chatter. Emily, she said, since you're so busy serving strangers, I'll save you the trouble. Your lease isn't valid anymore. The room froze. A fork clinked to the floor. My stomach lurched. What? I whispered. Carol's smirk widened as she held up a document. The building's under new ownership. My ownership. And as your new landlord, I'm tripling your rent. Effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mom's church friends whispered behind their cups. Mason's phone was still streaming, his grin stretching as wide as Carol's. You bought the building? My voice cracked. Carol gave a dramatic shrug. Opportunity knocks. You should have thought this through before sinking your little savings into a vanity project. Cupcakes don't pay mortgages, sweetheart. My mom sighed, almost rehearsed. We tried to warn you, Emily. But no, you never listen. My father avoided my eyes, fiddling with a sugar packet. And Mason? He leaned in, his words dripping poison. Guess you'll be moving back home sooner than you thought. Laughter burst from his live stream. My cheeks burned hotter than the ovens. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Customers shuffled awkwardly, some avoiding my eyes, others whispering in sympathy. A woman put her pastry down unfinished, suddenly uncomfortable in a room thick with family cruelty. I forced a breath. This is my bakery, my dream. You can't just— Carol cut me off. Dreams don't matter in business. Contracts do. And this one says I own your future. The words sank like stones. My chest constricted. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. My bakery, the place I built from midnight shifts, burned fingers, borrowed faith, suddenly felt like a trap closing in. Lorraine slammed her hand on the counter, furious. You vulture. You waited for her to open, to gather hope, just so you could gut her in front of everyone? Carol only smiled. Timing is everything. Tears burned my eyes. But I refused to let them fall here. Not in front of Mason's smirk. Not with Mom's sighs echoing like judgment. Not while Carol held that paper like a weapon. I managed to whisper, not here. Not now. But Mason leaned closer, cruel delight in his tone. Here's the thing, Em. Everyone's watching now. You either fold in front of them or you fight. But we both know you've never been a fighter. The words hit harder than Carol's papers. Because for a flicker of a second, I wondered if he was right. Customers shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. The hum of the espresso machine suddenly sounded like mockery, and as I stood there, my bakery buzzing with shame instead of sugar, I realized this was no accident. They'd planned it. Carol is buying the building. Mason is streaming the downfall. My mother is standing by, ready with her sighs. They hadn't come to celebrate me. They'd come to bury me. I clenched the counter until my nails dug grooves into the wood. My family thought they'd written my ending. What they didn't know was I was just getting started. That night, the bakery was silent. The hum of the fridge, the faint tick of the clock on the wall, every sound felt like mockery. The tables were wiped clean, chairs stacked, but in my chest it felt like I'd been hollowed out. I sat on the floor behind the counter, apron still on, my hands smelling of butter and flour. My phone buzzed over and over. Mason's stream had gone viral, dozens of comments, most of them cruel. Ouch, family really knows how to cut deepest. Why'd she even try? Cupcakes don't pay rent. Should have stayed in the kitchen like they said. Each word stabbed deeper. I thought about closing. Just walking away. Maybe my mom was right. I was reckless, impulsive, chasing fantasies I couldn't afford. Maybe Mason was right too, I wasn't a fighter. Lorraine called 3 times. I ignored her. My eyes were swollen, my throat raw from holding back sobs all day. I didn't want pity. Not even from the one person who believed in me. By midnight, I dragged myself upstairs to the tiny loft above the bakery where I slept. My bed felt like a stranger's. My body ached with exhaustion, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, memories did. My mom's voice when I was 12. You're messy in the kitchen. Leave it to your sister, Emily. Mason's taunts in high school. Why don't you just quit? Nobody cares about your little recipes. And Carol at graduation. She'll never make it in the real world. Too soft. I buried my face in the pillow, finally letting the sobs out. I shook so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. By dawn, I had nothing left inside me. Just emptiness. But when I stumbled downstairs, bleary-eyed, I saw something that made me stop cold. On the counter sat a brown paper bag. I hadn't left it there. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the top. Inside was a loaf of bread, golden, perfect, still warm. And tucked beneath it, a note in neat handwriting. Your family doesn't get to decide your worth. You feed people's hearts, not just their stomachs. Don't let them steal this from you. I pressed the note to my chest. My hands shook. My throat burned. For the first time since the ambush, a flicker of warmth broke through the ice. Someone believed. Someone saw me. And in that moment, I realized something my family had never understood. My bakery wasn't just dough and sugar. It was resilience. It was survival. It was mine, I whispered into the empty room. I won't stay broken. I picked up the note, tucked it into my apron, and stared at Carol's papers again. If she wanted a war, she was about to get one. The note Lorraine left me burned in my pocket all week. Every time I reached for it, I felt steadier. My family had knocked me flat, but I wasn't staying down. If they wanted me to fail, fine. But they'd never see me crawl. I began with the papers Carol had accidentally left behind. I sat at my desk in the loft, coffee going cold beside me, and spread them out like puzzle pieces. At first glance, they looked like harmless contracts. But as I traced the fine print, I saw it. Subleases, hidden clauses, numbers that didn't add up. Carol wasn't just scheming to take my bakery, she'd already started laying the groundwork. One clause in particular made my blood boil. Tenant default will result in immediate property transfer to secondary applicant. And the signature below? Carol Thompson. My own sister had signed her name under mine, as if she were already preparing to inherit what I'd built. I whispered, "Not this time, Carol. Not anymore." I couldn't fight her alone. So I made a list of allies. First was Lorraine. I called her the next morning. My voice cracked, but steadied as I explained. "They're trying to take everything from me. Will you help?" Her reply was instant. "I've been waiting for you to ask." Second was Mr. Hargrove, the landlord. He was gruff, the type who didn't care for drama, but he cared about payments. And I knew Carol was counting on my defaulting. So I set up a meeting, armed with every invoice, every cleared check, every piece of proof that I wasn't behind on a single bill. He raised an eyebrow at my organized binder. "You run this place tighter than most restaurants in this city," he muttered. "If someone's trying to paint you as unreliable, they're lying." That was the opening I needed. Third, I contacted a lawyer, an old classmate of mine named Stephanie, who now specializes in small business cases. I slid Carol's contracts across her desk. She skimmed them, lips tightening. "This is fraud," she said flatly. "She's forging conditions that don't exist. If she tries to enforce these, she'll be the one in trouble." I exhaled. The tension I hadn't realized I was holding finally easing. The trap was starting to take shape. Meanwhile, I worked harder than ever in the bakery. Not just for survival, but to make sure my family saw that no ambush, no smear, no betrayal could stop me. Each croissant was armor. Each cake, a battle cry. And with every customer who left smiling, my resolve hardened. But revenge needed timing. And fate handed me the perfect opportunity. Carol's annual charity gala. She hosted it every spring, flaunting her connections, lording her supposed success over the family. I knew she'd invite me this year just to humiliate me again. So I decided I'd let her. I'd walk in quietly. I'd smile politely. And then, when the room was full, I'd expose her. Lorraine helped me collect receipts, invoices, and witness statements. Stephanie drafted a legal letter that outlined Carol's fraudulent actions in devastating detail. Mr. Hargrove agreed to attend the gala, backing me up in case Carol tried to twist the narrative. I had everything I needed. One night, as I locked up the bakery, Mason appeared outside. His hoodie was pulled low, his eyes bloodshot. "You think you're clever," he muttered, making us look like villains online. Mom's furious. Carol's planning something big. I met his glare with a calm I didn't feel. "Tell Carol I'll be ready." For the first time, Mason's smirk faltered. As he walked away, a chill ran down my spine. Because if Mason knew I was preparing, that meant Carol wasn't just planning an attack. She was already moving her pieces into place. The gala loomed like a storm cloud. For weeks, I baked through the night, kept my head down, and pretended not to notice the whispers swirling through my family. But every caramel drizzle, every perfectly layered cake reminded me I wasn't powerless anymore. Carol wanted me small. I was about to make her choke on how wrong she was. The night of the gala, I slipped into a navy dress. Not flashy, but sharp enough to say I belonged in the room. Lorraine met me at the door, squeezing my hand. "You ready?" she whispered. I smiled, though my stomach was tight. "Ready enough." The ballroom was all glitter and self-importance. Carol floated through the crowd in sequins, her laugh loud. Her arm looped through our mother's. Mason trailed behind, smirking like he already knew the punchline of a cruel joke. When she spotted me, Carol's smile turned predatory. "Oh, Emily, you made it." She kissed the air by my cheek. I wasn't sure you'd be brave enough after everything. I tilted my head. You did say I needed to learn to face reality. So, here I am. Her smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Small victory, I thought. The night dragged on. Champagne glasses clinked, donors wrote checks, and Carol basked in attention. I stayed near the edges, waiting. My heart raced every time her eyes flicked toward me. Finally, the moment came. Carol climbed onto the stage, microphone in hand. I want to thank everyone for supporting not just my company, she purred, but my family. We rise together, don't we? The hypocrisy nearly made me laugh. That's when I moved. Slowly, deliberately, I stepped into the center of the crowd. Lorraine placed a folder into my hands, the one Stephanie had prepared. My pulse thundered. Excuse me, I said, voice steady. Before we rise together, I think everyone should know how Carol's been treating her own family. Gasps rippled. Carol froze on stage, eyes wide. Emily! She hissed, microphone still live. This isn't the time. I opened the folder and held up the contract. This is what my sister tried to slip into a lease. Fraudulent clauses. My name forged. And here, I flipped to another page, are the receipts proving I've never missed a single payment, murmurs spread. Donors leaned forward, whispering. Mr. Hargrove, standing at the back, cleared his throat. She's right. Carol's been trying to play both sides. I won't be renewing her sponsorship after this. Carol's face drained of color. You can't do this here, she snapped. Oh, I said softly. I think this is the perfect place. For a moment, the silence was deafening. Then, like cracks spreading across glass, people began to pull back from her. Conversations turned sharp. Her friends avoided her eyes. It wasn't a total victory, not yet. But it was the first crack in her empire. As I left the ballroom, Lorraine whispered in my ear, You rattled her cage. Now she'll come swinging. I nodded, my hands still trembling. Good, let her. I'm ready this time. Back at my bakery, a single envelope waited on the counter. Inside was a photo, me at the gala, folder in hand. Across the bottom, scrawled in ink, Careful. The game's only just begun. The envelope sat on my counter all night. I barely slept. Whoever had taken that photo wasn't just watching, they were close. Close enough to follow me into the lion's den? By morning? The note echoed in my head. The game's only just begun. I had a choice. Stay scared. Or push harder. I chose harder. The plan was simple. Expose Carol in a way she couldn't spin, deny, or bury. She thrived in curated spaces where she controlled the narrative. So I had to turn her own stage against her. The perfect chance came quicker than I expected. 2 weeks later, Carol announced a family appreciation brunch at the country club. She called it a celebration of unity. I almost choked when I saw the invitation. Unity? She wanted to launder her image after the gala fallout. Go, Lorraine urged. She's desperate. That's when people slip. So I went. The dining hall was dripping with chandeliers and fake smiles. Carol sat at the head of the long table, glowing in a cream dress. Mason lounged beside her, his smirk sharper than ever. My mother fussed with the silverware, avoiding my gaze. I took a seat halfway down, quiet, observant. My heart thumped like a drum. Carol raised her glass. To family, she announced, her voice sweet as poison. No matter what happens, we stand together. My jaw tightened. Enough was enough. I slid a small black flash drive from my purse and held it up. Funny thing about standing together, Carol. It doesn't usually involve stabbing your family in the back. Gasps. Heads turned. Carol's smile cracked. Emily, not here, I stood. Oh, exactly here. With a nod to the club's AV tech, someone Lorraine had quietly tipped off, the projector lit up. And the first document filled the screen. Slide 1. Carol's forged lease contract. My name sloppily copied at the bottom. Slide 2. A string of emails she'd written to Mason, laughing about how I'd never see it coming. Slide 3. A balance sheet showing donor funds mysteriously routed into her personal account. Whispers turned into outright murmurs. Forks clattered onto china. Carol shot to her feet, voice shrill. "This is fake!" She's lying. But then the video played. Grainy, yes, but clear enough. Carol in her office, bragging to Mason. Emily thinks she's clever, but she'll never make it. Once the bakery's gone, she'll crawl back where she belongs. The room erupted. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. Mason's smirk vanished. Donors and club members exchanged horrified looks. Carol lunged toward me, eyes blazing. How dare you?" I stepped back, voice calm, steady. "I dared to survive you, and now I dare to expose you." She froze, trembling, because she knew there was no crawling out of this. The CEO of a major supplier, who had been on the fence about partnering with her, stood up. "If even half of this is true, we're done here. I won't associate with fraud." And just like that, her carefully constructed empire began to collapse in front of everyone. The brunch dissolved into chaos. My mother wept silently at the table. Mason slipped out the side door like a coward. And Carol? She stood alone, pale, shaking, muttering, "This isn't happening." But it was. As I left, Lorraine whispered in my ear, "That wasn't just a win." That was the kill shot. I nodded, though my hands were still trembling. Because I knew it wasn't over yet. The fallout was only beginning. That night, as I closed the bakery, I found another envelope taped to the door. Inside was a single line. "You've won the battle. But have you prepared for the war?" The morning after the brunch, the air in Portland felt sharper, brighter. News traveled fast in our community, and by sunrise, Carol's perfect facade was cracking wide open. Emails poured into my inbox. Vendors, club members, even distant relatives. Each message buzzing with the same energy. Shock, anger, betrayal. The ones who had once bowed to Carol's charisma now treated her like she was radioactive. By noon, her name was trending locally. Charity darling exposed as fraud. I sat in my bakery, sipping coffee, watching the line of customers snake around the block. Some people came for the pastries. Most came to see me. The girl who stood up at a country club brunch and dismantled Carol in front of her own kingdom, but the high didn't erase the ache. That night, my mother called. Her voice was small, trembling. "Emily, I didn't know. I thought she was helping you." "I never wanted—" I cut her off gently. "Mom, you looked away. Maybe you didn't forge my signature, but you let her treat me like I was nothing. And silence is its own kind of betrayal," she sobbed. For the first time, I heard guilt in her tears. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Another part whispered, "Too late." Mason, on the other hand, didn't hide. He showed up at the bakery 3 days later, leaning against the counter like he still owned the room. "You think you've won?" He sneered. "Carol built this family's reputation. Without her, we're nothing." I met his gaze, steady. "Correction. Without lies, you're nothing." His smirk faltered. For once, he had no comeback. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the bell clanged off-key. But the hardest part came later. I found Carol sitting in her car outside my bakery one night, her face pale under the streetlight. She rolled down the window. "You ruined me," she hissed, voice shaking. "Do you even realize what you've done?" I swallowed hard. "No, Carol, you ruined yourself. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see." Her eyes filled with tears, but her mouth curled into a bitter smile. "Enjoy it while you can, Emily. Empires fall fast, but revenge burns quicker." Then she drove off into the dark. For days after, I felt torn between triumph and unease. I'd exposed her, yes. But the anonymous notes still haunted me. The last one had warned me about war. Who was watching me so closely? Were they friend, foe, or something in between? Still, for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking in someone else's shadow. My bakery thrived. Customers filled the space with warmth, laughter, and the smell of sugar and cinnamon. My dream was alive, and it was mine. And yet, I knew the story wasn't finished. Carol was wounded, but not gone. Mason was humiliated, but not quiet. My mother was broken, but not redeemed. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the weight of another coming. One night, as I locked the bakery, headlights flared behind me. A car idled at the curb. Slowly, the window rolled down, and I saw Carol's face staring back, her lips twisting into a smile that sent a shiver down my spine. The night Carol's car idled outside my bakery, my pulse thundered. For a moment, I thought she'd step out, unleash one last venomous strike. Instead, she just smiled, a hollow, bitter smile, and drove away. That was the last time I ever saw her in person. In the weeks that followed, everything shifted. The country club cut ties with her. Mason's investments crumbled when people realized they'd been fueled more by Carol's influence than his own merit. My mother retreated into silence, the weight of shame finally settling on her shoulders. And me? I thrived. My bakery became more than a business. It was a sanctuary for people who'd been underestimated, dismissed, cast aside. I started hiring local teens, single moms, and retirees who just needed someone to believe in them. Every cupcake, every loaf of bread carried the quiet triumph of a second chance. Sometimes customers asked if I'd forgive my family. Here's the truth. Forgiveness isn't mandatory. Closure doesn't mean opening the door again. I learned that boundaries are not walls, they're gates. And I get to decide who walks through. The greatest revenge wasn't humiliating Carol. It wasn't watching Mason crumble or hearing whispers about my mother's guilt. The greatest revenge was reclaiming my voice, my worth, and my future. I no longer whispered in corners, praying for acceptance. I stood tall, apron dusted with flour, sunlight streaming through the bakery windows, alive and unshakable, and every time I swiped my CEO badge, I remembered the moment Carol's smirk cracked and how empowerment tastes far sweeter than revenge ever could. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It means more than you know. Would you forgive betrayal like this or walk away forever? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Because sometimes the people who say you're worth nothing are just afraid of how powerful you'll become when you finally prove them wrong.